Welcome to the Lead Change podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Mulcahy. I'm an orthopedic sports medicine surgeon with a huge interest in contributing to the growth and development of other leaders. On this podcast, we will share stories from many leaders in all medical specialties to understand the skills necessary to be an effective leader. We'll celebrate their success and hear about strategies to overcome hurdles. We will also highlight some of the unique challenges faced by women in medicine who are interested in pursuing leadership positions and the importance of mentorship, sponsorship, and allyship in achieving and being successful in those roles. Let's work together, build on shared experiences, learn from those before us, and use these lessons to propel us forward in our career. Let's lead change. Welcome everyone to the Lead Change podcast. It is a huge honor to have Dr. David Parker here as our guest today. Dr. Parker is an internationally recognized knee surgeon. He has interests in computer-assisted and robotic knee surgery, sports injuries, and ligament reconstruction surgery, as well as surgery to restore and realign the knee joint. He completed his orthopedic training in Sydney, Australia, and spent 2 years studying overseas in world-renowned institutions to further his knowledge and training, specifically in the area of knee surgery. He established the Sydney Orthopedic Research Institute in 2002, and as a result of that, just has subsequently become known internationally for his research into surgery of the knee joint. He has given numerous presentations internationally. He has over 125 publications and book chapters. He is actively involved in a number of orthopedic and sports medicine organizations, including being past president of the International Society for Arthroscopy, Knee Surgery, and Orthopedic Sports Medicine, that is ISAKOS, past president of the Asia Pacific Knee Arthroscopy and Sports Medicine Society, or APKASS, and a past board member of the ACL study group. He's a clinical associate professor at the University of Sydney, and he's on the scientific advisory board for the Aspetar Clinic in Qatar. Outside of his work, David enjoys spending time with his beautiful wife and 4 children. He enjoys live music, sports, travel, and volunteer lifeguarding at the local beach. David and I have come to know each other very well through ISAKOS. He is a fantastic colleague and mentor, and I am truly grateful for his support and the many opportunities he has given to me and others through ISAKOS. I'm really looking forward to having an in-depth discussion about leadership and some of the things that he's learned throughout his career. So David, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you, Mary. Thank you very much for that very generous introduction. It's lovely to be here and have a chat with you about this.
Thank you so much. So, David, before we dive in a little bit more, I touched on this a little bit in your bio, but can you tell us about your clinical practice and kind of highlight the things that you enjoy doing most and where your interests really lie?
Sure. So as you said, I'm in Sydney, Australia, and my practice is both in the public system and the private system. We operate in both often in Australia. My only thing I do is knee surgery, but unlike the US, we cover all knee surgery cradle to grave. So about half of my practice is arthroplasty and half of it is sports medicine. So I do many knee replacements every year, a lot of ACL reconstructions, multi-ligament reconstructions, have a big interest in osteotomy, and we really do a lot of research. As you say, we've had a research institute we established just over 20 years ago. I think we have over 20,000 patients in our database, so we really like to have an evidence-driven practice in what we do. So there's a big focus on trying to lead from the front in terms of doing the research to back up everything we do. So so that's our practice. I'm in a group practice with 4 other knee surgeons, all of whom share the same philosophy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it really drives what you do. It's really based on evidence-based medicine. And I'm sure your patients see that and they appreciate that you're doing the work to try to understand what's the best treatment for them, given their specific condition. And I've seen the excellent research that you guys do. So congratulations on all of that.
Thank you.
So you were president of ISAKOS from 2023 to 2025. And it was fantastic to work with you during that period of time. For our listeners, though, who may not be familiar with ISAKOS, can you explain just a little bit of what that organization is?
Sure. So it stands for the International Society of Arthroscopy, Knee Surgery, and Orthopedic Sports Medicine, and it's the biggest organization of its kind and really the only truly international organization that brings those specialties together. It formed, like most organizations, it formed from a few interested people around the world who thought bringing people together and sharing knowledge was a good way to advance what we do. And initially there was the International Arthroscopy Association and the International Knee Society. And they had separate meetings, and they gradually grew, and then they started to combine their meetings, and they realized that there was a synergy there, so they decided that they would combine in 1995. And so this year is the 30th anniversary of ISAKOS. And it's grown from having these very sort of boutique groups back in the 80s to an organization now that has over 4,000 members around the world from over 100 countries. So it's as you've been involved, it's a wonderful organization that really tries to advance what we do in sports medicine and knee surgery around the world.
Yeah, I think it's an absolutely tremendous organization. It's been fantastic to learn from sports medicine surgeons from all over the world. You see some similarities, but a lot of differences and a lot of different ways to approach things. You realize that there's not just one way, and so I really value the relationships, the camaraderie, all that comes from having those collaborations and the relationships with our international colleagues. It certainly has enhanced my practice and the care of my patients, and I think that we all feel that way and really value those experiences.
Yep. Now, I think if you've been to one of our meetings, then you'll know that every time you go to a session, there will be usually one person from each continental region of the world. And I think it really opens people's minds to how much you can learn if you actually listen to the different opinions that come from the world, some of which you'll agree with, some which you won't, but it really gives you an opportunity to amalgamate all of those opinions from around the world to work out what you think is the best way to treat your patients.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think sometimes you're like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. That's incredible. During your term as president of ISAKOS, what were some of the initiatives that you were able to implement or help carry forward?
Yeah, so, a lot of it is about carrying on the good work that's already been done. As we came out of COVID, it was a tough time for ISAKOS, and we developed a lot more online content and did webinars, and we carried that, really developed that program such that I think over the 1 year, we had about 6,000 registrations from around the world for our webinars. So that was something that we've carried on very well. We did a lot of cadaveric labs around the world. Because we have our biannual meeting that will rotate around the regions, so it only gets to a region once every 8 years. And so we set up other initiatives to try and reach the different regions. Because we're a global organization, we're trying to reach people and stay relevant in the different areas around the world. So we set up different cadaveric lab initiatives and teaching initiatives. I think one of the really pleasing ones was one that we did in India, which I know you're aware of. That was specifically for female surgeons from India, because we recognized that there was a need, and that was incredibly well received and very gratifying. And we had a strategic plan that we developed last year, really just to try and have a vision for how we can grow the organization globally, keep doing the good things that we're doing, but evolve and develop new strategies for reaching people around the world. And of course, culminating in Munich, which I think was another step forward in how we run meetings and how we bring people together, and that was incredibly successful. So there's a lot of initiatives and a lot of teamwork. There's so many people involved in this organization. I think as the president, you're obviously at the forefront, but there's a huge team right behind you, and everybody comes from a similar background. They all have the same enthusiasm that's driven to make the organization better.
Yeah, it's a fantastic team, and that the meeting in Munich was a culmination, like you said, of a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of people who contributed to that, with you and Al Gatgood sort of leading the charge. And I think everyone had thought the meeting was phenomenal. Tons of excellent educational content, and just the way the meeting was structured and organized, and the different sessions, and how smooth everything flowed. We all really enjoyed that, and definitely are starting to look forward to 2027 in Sydney.
Sure.
You touched on the tremendous team that you work with, both from a ISAKOS staff perspective, but also the many surgeons that you work with from around the world as part of this organization, and certainly in the highest level of leadership. But what were some of the leadership lessons, some of the lessons, I guess, that you learned from a leadership perspective specifically while you were president of ISAKOS?
Look, I think it's funny because I sort of feel like I'm an accidental leader. You get involved in these organizations just because you find it very inspiring and very interesting, and you want to learn, as we said before, from different people around the world. And then the more you get involved, the more you get asked to do things, and your responsibility increases. And so you come into these positions not really so much trained for it, but just trained by your experience. And then when you actually take it on, then you're sort of a little bit, you're prepared from your experience and from your observations from before, but you haven't really been formally trained. And there are certainly challenges. And I think sometimes, other people have said this, that leadership can be a somewhat lonely experience because you're trying to assimilate the views of maybe a dozen people or more, and respect everybody's views, but still come to a decision. So I think, and we had, for the most part, we're dealing with education, things that we really enjoy. Everybody's pretty much aligned, and we're just sort of trying to bring people together and keep them on a pathway towards a specific goal rather than just a task. But there are challenges, particularly when you're dealing with a global organization and different opinions from around the world. And I think that's one of the things I learned is, certainly a certain amount of diplomacy, if you like. It gives me a certain respect for politicians, which I think most of us haven't really had before. But the difficulties in trying to take in everybody's input and somehow turn that into a productive plan whilst keeping everybody on board and everybody on side. So there's challenges there, but for the most part, particularly in a medical organization where you can look at what you've achieved, there's a lot that's gratifying that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, I think diplomacy is a great word. It's true. I mean, it's all about, it's sort of consensus a little bit. I mean, you're never going to get 100% consensus, but as you touched on, it's like you want to consider, you want to hear everyone's thoughts, concerns, ideas, and you take that together. And as president of the organization, trying to make the best decision for the organization as a whole. But I could definitely see where those challenges would arise, and it's a very unique challenge, I think. I mean, certainly as president of a society within one individual country, it's not the same. I mean, there are some challenges obviously with that, but when you're working with surgeons from around the world, I think that's a very unique situation.
Yeah, and I think everybody will bring ideas to the table. Everybody has their passion behind those ideas, and the problem is you can't do every idea, and some ideas are really not practical, or we've already done them before. And so respecting everybody's input, respecting everybody brings their passion, but trying to actually work out what the best thing for the organization is means often saying no to certain things or dampening certain things down, but bringing things to the table. So there's a certain amount of negotiation and diplomacy required.
But ultimately, obviously, with the organization's best interest in mind.
Exactly.
Yeah, you touched a little bit on the new strategic plan for ISAKOS. And as part of that, it actually includes a section related to leadership training for board members and committee members. So can you explain to us what that entails and the reason for actually incorporating that as part of the strategic plan?
Sure. Yeah, and it was an observation that I made to our CEO during my time is that that I come into this position, and as you know, when I've been on the board before, and then you become second vice president for 2 years and vice president for 2 years. So there's a lot of observational learning that goes on, and you understand the structure of the organization. But I said to her, we haven't really had any training in how to do this job. This is a pretty important job. It's a volunteer job. It's not our main job, but it's an important job, and it carries a fair bit of responsibility. And we never really had any training in doing this. And I think that's something we should institute. So yes, so the new president has undergone some training, and that will happen in the future for all the subsequent presidents. And then we have our board and our executive, and I think many people have been involved in boards for organizations, and often people just end up on the board because they're involved and someone nominates them, but they don't really know what their role is. What are you meant to be doing? Do you just sit there in the board meeting once every 3 months and nod, or do you contribute? How do you actually make the most? Because the whole point of a board, particularly an organisation like ISAKOS, is to have representatives from around the world, diversity of opinion. And if you don't get everybody contributing, then you don't take advantage of that diversity. So we're going to have a lot more processes for onboarding people who are on the executive, on the board, so they actually understand what their role is. So they have very much a goal-based approach to being on the board of ISAKOS rather than a task-based. So it's just being a little bit more proactive and making sure people understand what their roles are, what their goals are with the organisation, rather than hoping someone falls into the role and turns out to be good at it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think the people going into those roles are really going to appreciate it when they're better prepared and hence can contribute more meaningfully to the group and to helping to drive initiatives forward. So I think that's going to be hugely successful, and I just can't wait to see kind of how all those things come together. Before we kind of dive further into your leadership journey and some of the other specific roles, I wonder if there have been any pivotal moments in your career that have really shaped who you are as a leader.
Yeah, for sure. I think yeah, it often comes down to the people that you meet, as you know, and the power of mentorship. I mean, when and I can pick certain people on the way. When I was a trainee at the hospital I still work at, and I came across one very inspiring surgeon who really took me under his wing and really made me feel that I was worthwhile and that I could be good at this, and really empowered me to really pursue this and try and be the best that I could be. And that got me through my training and inspired me to really try and do well with that. And then from there I went on to do my fellowship, and I spent a lot of time with Peter Fowler in London, Ontario. And Peter was the first president of ISAKOS, and he really, and all of his fellows will say the same thing. He was an incredible mentor, and just teaching you the values of looking after your patients well, listening to people, including people, really just respecting the power that everybody brings to a conversation. And he was such an incredible leader and an inspiring person that he got me involved with ISAKOS at the start. And that's really inspired me to continue to be very engaged in the organisation. I mean, at that stage, I wasn't ever thinking I would be president of the organisation, but it was he inspired me to really get involved, and by getting involved, that's how you develop your career more. So there's sort of turning points, I think, and I think it really just shows the power of mentorship, because I know that if I hadn't had that time with those two people, I'd probably still be an orthopedic surgeon, but I wouldn't have reached the level that I've done, because I wouldn't have really ever been empowered to think that I could get there. So I don't know where I would have ended up, but I think that really changed the way that I thought about the things that I do. So I think it's a real lesson for those of us as we're getting older, that just simple little conversations with younger people can actually have a huge impact.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's really incredible to hear that story, and I love the use of the word empowered, right? To say that these people, they had such a profound effect on you and made you feel and helped you believe that you could be successful and be incredibly successful and rise to very high levels of leadership in these organizations. And that was at a very early point in your career. So it's really incredible to hear about the impact that they've had on you. And we learn so much from everyone we interact with, especially people in leadership positions, from people we perceive to be great leaders. We also learn from people who maybe we don't connect with as well, or we don't, their leadership style doesn't quite resonate with us. And so I wonder, can you share with us maybe some lessons you've learned from leaders that you didn't quite connect with, and how that maybe has impacted you?
Yeah, I think everybody has their own sort of leadership style, and I think we've talked a lot about leadership at an organisation like this, trying to get everybody's opinions around the table. And I think there's the style of leadership where you're basically a facilitator, right? and it's your job to get the best out of everybody in the room, make sure everybody contributes, and then direct that conversation towards a specific goal. Whereas I think I've seen other leadership styles where the meeting starts with the goal already decided, and it's just an affirmation of that, and it's a very sort of, I don't want to use the word dictatorial, but yeah, they're not really engaging people because they've already decided what they want to do. And I think you need to come into all these scenarios with very much an open mind. I mean, obviously everybody has an idea of where they want to go with this decision or that decision, but listening to people around the table, bringing everybody in, and seeing yourself as the facilitator of combining everybody's opinion for the best goal is the style that I think is really critical towards leadership. And I think the leadership styles that I've seen in the past where you can sit there as a member of a board or a member, but you're not really being engaged because the leader has already decided what they want to do, and they have a few people that supports that, and that's already been decided before. So I think, yeah, there's leadership styles that I've certainly come across where, as a member of an organisation, you don't feel particularly engaged, and the leader they're at another level. So I think if you're in a board, if you're in an executive, you really want to feel that everybody within the room is on the same level, not that you've got a leader up here and everybody else is down here. And I think that's up to the leader to make everybody feel that way.
Yeah, and I think that for the other people, like on, as part of that team, the board or part of the committee, it makes a huge difference to have a leader, whether it's the committee chair or president of the organization, really valuing and engaging everyone who is part of that group, because it makes you as an individual want to contribute more, and to feel like you're on sort of trying to achieve a collective mission or goal. And so I think, like you were saying, I mean, everybody wins and really benefits from that type of style. With your roles, in ISAKOS, in APKASS, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, the ACL study group, and within your own institution. I'm curious to understand, what is it that drives you? What really motivates you in everything that you do?
Oh, Mary, I don't know. I think I don't really know where it comes from. I think you become a bit of a perfectionist, and you want to sort of achieve the best possible in everything that you do, and in some ways it can be a little bit exhausting, because you want to be perfect at every single aspect of your life, whether it's your work, whether it's your personal life, and it's not possible to do that. But I guess I've always wanted to lead. I've always wanted to define the way we do things, and in order to do that, that's why we set up our research program. I realized a long time ago that when I went to meetings, that the people up there on the stage leading the way were the ones who did the research. And so we established that, and that's really driven me to try and get involved. And then the more you get involved, as you know, the more you get asked to do things, and that drives your position more. But it's never really been about being the leader. It's about being a leader by example. And I think, and that's what really drives me. And and then in your day-to-day practice, it's really that satisfaction that you get from every patient that comes back and is happy, and you've really done a lot for them. But probably the things that weigh on your mind even more, the ones who come back and aren't happy. Yeah, but they're probably the ones you learn from the most. So I think it's this drive to sort of really feel satisfied at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, or at the end of the year, you've done something worthwhile. And I think sometimes it depends where you set your standards, but I really sort of feel that you want to get to the end of your week or your year thinking, that was a good year, I did this, I did this, I did this, and it was worthwhile, and I actually achieved what I wanted to achieve. So a lot of it's very driven by the satisfaction that we get from what we do.
And I think that's a great way to put it too, is that you're looking at it not just in a really sort of long time period, but these shorter increments too. Like this week, we accomplished this, or we had this impact on this patient, or this patient came back and maybe didn't have the greatest outcome, but I learned from this, and this is how we'll, benefit patients in the future. You look at by week, by month, year, and then certainly, longer time periods, but that helps you sort of see what you're doing and appreciate all that you've accomplished, so which you have had just really an incredible career.
Yeah, and I think it's important. we probably spend 90% of our thought time thinking about the 5% of patients who don't do well, right? And I think sometimes that can be a little bit damaging, and sometimes we have to sort of remind ourselves that the majority of people are actually doing well. But it's finding a balance, because obviously if you take those worse results seriously and it helps you improve things and become even better at what you do is good. But if you let them weigh on your mind too much, it can be a little bit depressing and a little bit not very productive. So there's a balance there between using those to inspire you to do better, but also appreciate that the majority of the time things are going well.
Yeah, thank goodness. I know the majority of time things go well, which is helps us kind of keep going. But we certainly do learn from those more challenging situations as well. So you touched a little bit on the shoulder arthroscopy course that we had in Chennai, India last year, as a way to support female sports medicine surgeons. But I wonder too, what are some of the ways that you have supported and promoted women in leadership in ISAKOS and in sports medicine as a whole? And why is that something that's been important to you?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, to me, it's something that you don't sometimes notice until someone points it out to you. I think we often, when we're from our side, which is the white male upper class side, you sort of don't see the problems that other people have unless someone points them out to you, and particularly someone who you know and you've got a good relationship with, so they're comfortable pointing it out to you. So when I became second vice president, Laurie Heemstra very, very well, obviously, and Laurie was on the board and she did a fellowship with me, and as in we were fellows together in London, Ontario. And she reached out to me and said, ISAKOS isn't doing a very good job with women. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, why don't you help us solve the problem? Because usually when people come to me with a problem, I usually try and get them to be part of the solution, right? Because that's usually the best way to engage people. And so we set up a gender diversity task force, which she chaired, and you've been involved in that. You're now the chair of that. And I think you can see what that's achieved by bringing people in. And in terms of the benefits to any organization is obvious, right? Because you want to, male or female, you want to get everybody involved. Because the more people you get involved, the more people that can contribute to the organization. And so it's the same with any business, any organization. You don't want to have people who feel excluded, who may be a really incredible contributor. So, and I think one of the things that we've learned from this process is, as men, getting a better understanding of the barriers that exist for women that maybe in the past we've sort of brushed off, or maybe haven't really appreciated properly. And as you get to know people like yourself and Laurie and other people involved more, then you appreciate this. And I think when we had that discussion around the course in Chennai, we had a discussion with the executive. Obviously, the things that you come up against is if you have a women-only course, then people will say, well, that's not equal, that's not equality. And my response to that was, well, we have a gender diversity task force who's recommended this, and we've spoken to the people from India who've recommended this, and as a middle-aged white male, I don't really feel comfortable telling them that I know better about what they need than they do. So I think, again, you sort of just try to listen to people from their learned experience and educate yourself about that, and that allows you to bring people in because you understand the barriers that they face, and you're in a position where you can help take down those barriers. And so I think we're in a good trajectory. The problem's not solved, but I think as you know, in ISAKOS we had that Women of ISAKOS lunch, and that was incredible. I mean, we had 160 people, mainly because that's all we could fit in the room, right? And it was a wonderful, inspiring thing, because we saw on one table I had Liza Arendt, who's been a leader for years and been the go-to person on this topic for so long, and so much pressure has rested on her shoulders. But then on the next table, I've got a young female surgeon from Africa who's so excited that she sees this opportunity. She sees what's possible. And I think that's really gratifying to know that that's where we've come to. There's still a way to go, but I think we're sort of over the hump in terms of getting the momentum going.
Yeah, that luncheon was absolutely incredible. Like, even, I mean, I had no idea that there would be so many people there, and to see everyone in that, all those people in that room, was really, really inspiring, even for us who have helped kind of coordinate some of these events. I had no idea it would be that big, and I think it was hugely successful. And there were a ton of people standing outside the room. There were way more people that wanted to get in there, and there just wasn't enough space. So it speaks to, how well received that was, the interest that there is, the support. And I will also say again, it really meant a lot to everyone in there to have you and Al Get Good and the presidential line in there for that entire session. I mean, Al was there representing as program chair, but Bob Marks, like, incredible to have all of you guys there to really demonstrate ISAKOS's commitment to promoting diversity, to supporting women leaders. So that was very well received, and everyone, of course, acknowledged and noticed that. So thank you again for your support for that and many other initiatives.
Well, I think I speak for the whole presidential line of how we all felt privileged to be there. I mean, I tell you, we did a site visit the day before. We went and saw the room, and I said, no, it's a big room. We're going to have good enough people. And so when we had people who were being turned away, it was just fantastic. And I said to Liza Aaron at the end of it all, as we were leaving, I said, this must make you very happy. And she said, it's incredible. And so, again, it's not job done, but it's a really good indication of how far we've come since I had that first email from Laurie, 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's really incredible to see the changes, and it comes with a lot of support from the leadership and a lot of interest and hard work from members of the task force and others. So thanks again. Another significant leadership role you've held is being president of APKASS. So can you explain for all of us too a little bit about what that group is and some of the most important lessons you took away from serving in that role?
Yes, so APKASS is the Asia Pacific Knee Arthroscopy and Sports Medicine Society. So it's sort of like the Asia Pacific equivalent of ISAKOS. And again, I got involved in that just through mutual contacts and going to the meetings and being willing to do this job or that job, and eventually one job leads to another and you end up getting involved at the highest level. And so with ISAKOS, we have partner societies in each region, and APKASS is the partner society for Asia Pacific. And I mean, the Asia Pacific region is a huge area, right? It's got more than half the world's population. And when you compare it to a region like North America, which is a lot more homogenous, and Europe, people are quite similar, a little bit more diverse than South America. But then you go to Asia Pacific, and you've got countries like Australia and New Zealand, and then you've got China, and then all these smaller countries in Southeast Asia, and you move across towards India. I mean, and there's so many organizations because everyone wants to have their organization, but this is the one that's sort of bringing people together the most around the Asia Pacific region. So it's an interesting organization. It has a meeting every 2 years now. We have one every 1 year to get the momentum going initially. And again, this was born out of another organization that had been present for 20 years, and they just sort of refined the scope and the goals of the organization. So it's a good organization. It brings people from the Asia Pacific region together. And leading that organization was always a bit of a challenge because you've got so many cultural differences, so many language differences, and so many different agendas that people have around a board table. And just trying to get everybody working together towards a common goal is difficult. But it turns out that every 2 years we have a meeting, and it's a very interesting meeting because, for example, if you're trying to get an idea of what's happening around the world, and you look at China, and China is doing some incredible things in research and development, and not just in medicine, but in all areas. And I think we're largely unaware of a lot of the things that they do in medicine because they publish in Chinese journals, and there's always skepticism about certain things, but the reality is they've got huge resources. They do a lot of research, and that's a huge area that if you don't actually stay in touch with it, then you won't know what's going on. And it's very hard currently for researchers from China to come to the rest of the world and present their research. So again, it's a challenging organization in the sense that there are many competing organizations in this large area, a lot of cultural differences, a lot of language differences, but it's a very worthwhile organization that can bring people from very westernized countries and completely the opposite together to learn and again promote knowledge around the world.
Yeah, thank you so much for clarifying that, because I'm not as familiar with APKASS either, but it's interesting to hear some of the similarities and where some differences lie, even in comparing APKASS, which also is a very international organization, to like ISAKOS, for example. So I'm sure those experiences definitely translated and helped you as you were in the serving as president in the presidential line for ISAKOS. I wonder, in your very successful career, are there specific things that you've done to really try to be successful, both as a leader and as a sports medicine surgeon?
Yeah, I think firstly, in anything that you do, being good at what you do, having credibility amongst your peers is probably the most important thing. I think if you think about all the things that you're trying to achieve, whether it's to run a successful business, to have a lot of patients, have busy operating lists, be presenting this research or that research. The thing that I think most of us crave is the respect of your peers. And if you are well recognized and respected and thought of highly by people that you think highly of, that's probably the best judge of what you've achieved in your career. So to me, that's always going to be the benchmark, not how many operations I do, not how much money I earn, not how many papers I've published. It's generally speaking the respect that you have of the peers that you respect. And I think that's been probably the main thing that's driven me, and everything tends to flow on from that.
I think you raised a lot of important points, so I appreciate that. Like saying like that having the respect of your peers is really the foundation and absolutely critical, whether we're talking about clinical aspects of our career or research or working as a team, working in a group, working on a committee. That's hugely important, and you're right, sets the basis for everything else. And we talked a little bit earlier in this conversation about some points in your career that were pivotal and really contributed to sort of your development as a leader. I wonder though, was there a time when someone made you feel that you didn't have the skills to be successful or to achieve a specific position? And how did you overcome that?
I haven't really had that many bad experiences in the sense that people being mean or bullying. I mean, I think I've gone through that era of training, like in the 90s, where it's training by humiliation, and you get something wrong and they make you feel like an idiot. But I actually didn't mind that, to be honest. I found that as a bit of a challenge, and I just always wanted to try and to win. So that didn't have an effect on me, not a direct effect, but I think probably the biggest critic is myself, and I think I tell people I spent my whole resident registrar years feeling guilty because anything that went wrong, even if it had nothing to do with me, if it was my patient, I felt guilty. And I think you're hard on yourself. And so I think it's probably more not so much that someone tells you you're not worthy or you can't do this. It's the inner voice all the time that's telling you, no, you're not as good as this or you're not as good as that. And you're trying to disprove that all the time. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe I need to have an analyst or something. But I think that's my main critic is myself, because every time something doesn't go perfectly, then I'll be hard on myself and I'll say, well, I could have done this or I could have done that. And I guess I sometimes will do that also with my fellows or people I'm teaching. But the point is that every time something goes wrong, it's a learning experience. That's the positive side of it. There can also be a damaging experience if you take it too hard. So I think I'm always my harshest critic.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And no, I don't think you need like an analyst or whatnot. I think we all do that. We all are definitely sort of critiquing everything that we do and saying, how can we make this better, or what happened in this situation in all aspects of our career. So I definitely don't think you're alone there. All of us as orthopedic surgeons and probably just physicians in general do that. And I think it's ultimately because we're trying to do the best we can, be the best we can for ourselves, for our patients. And so in all these different things that you do, in Sydney, in these international organizations, I wonder, what would you describe though as your main superpower, right? What's one of your biggest strengths that really contributes to your success and maybe sets you apart from others?
Oh, superpower. I think in some respects, probably just persistence, and endurance and an ability just to sort of keep going. I think people often will say, how do you do this and this and do so many things, and I sort of don't really rate it terribly highly because I just feel like I'm doing what I've always done, but sometimes when you look back and you think, or even looking forward, I've got to do this, and you wonder how you're going to do it, but you just sort of put one foot in front of the other. So I think just the ability just to keep going, to be reasonably well organized is really important. And you can't do absolutely everything. And I heard someone say once, you can have everything, but you can't have everything all at once. And I think that's so true, in life. And so I don't really feel that I have a superpower other than, because if I had a superpower, then I wouldn't be having all these issues, right? I could just solve it. I just sort of wave my magic wand. But I think my ability just to sort of, get up the next morning and start again and just keep going and get things done. And sometimes that involves, sacrificing a lot of other stuff. And whether that's a superpower or a failure, I'm not sure. But so I think just that endurance. And I mean, I used to do a lot of running, a lot of marathons, and it's a lot of the things that we do in our career. I think I liken to that, because you're going along, you train really hard for it, and from about halfway through, all you want to do is just stop. But you can keep going. It's just going to hurt, right? And if you keep going, then by the time you've finished it, you'll be very happy. If you stop, you'll be miserable for the rest of your life. So you keep going and you do your best. And I think that's sort of my main thing, is just that ability just to keep going.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. And I mean, you can walk for a little bit, right? You can walk for a little bit and then pick up and run again to get to that finish line. But a couple questions to close this excellent discussion out. So I wonder, do you have any favorite leadership books?
I don't actually. I'm not a big book reader. I mean, I've read some books. I've looked at some books about leadership and other things about telling you how to live your life, and maybe I'm not giving them due credit, but I find I read a lot of these books and I think, I knew that, or I knew that, and it's just a lot of the comments are sort of self-explanatory, but it's the implementation is the hard bit, right? So you read this book about it, and it says, this is what you should be doing, and this is how you manage this. And it's like, well, that sort of makes sense. I think I could have worked that out for myself, but it's applying that to your life. And I think, I've certainly read books, autobiographies and things written by leaders who are inspirational. And I think those books can be good, but I haven't really read books or taken anything on board from books telling me how to be a leader.
I think it's a great point, though. Whatever you're reading, wherever you're kind of gaining information, though, it's not. I mean, it's in part the information, but it's more how you implement it, how you put that actually into practice, in all these different things that you're involved in. So I think that's a really key point to take away. And then last question, David, do you have a favorite quote?
There's probably many quotes that I've used before that I'll forget now, but I often come back to my old swimming coach, who had a couple of quotes that I use regularly on my fellows and on my children, which they hate. So, and we'd be doing this swimming training, which would go seemingly for hours. And one of the quotes was, when you're getting tired, he would say, "There's plenty of time for rest when you're dead." And I think that's That's become very well known as one of my quotes. And the other one, which it drives my children mad, is you'd be in a swimming session and you think it was time to be finished, right? And you'd say to them, "What's the time?" And he would say, "It's the best time of your life. Enjoy it." And that is a great quote, I think, because it is. Yeah, you're not here for very long, and I think if you can have that attitude to every day, then you're more likely to get the most out of life, I think.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Those are great quotes. So thank you so much, David, for your time, for all your insight, everything that you've shared, and again, for the huge amount of support that you've shown to me and many others within and outside of ISAKOS. I really appreciate it. I truly appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure, Mary. Congratulations to you on everything that you're doing with your leadership role. It's just incredibly gratifying to see you and other people like yourself grow within our organization.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you in Sydney. Take care.